As it turns out, flattery will get you everywhere, at least when it comes to infamous serial killers. How exactly did authorities extract a confession of 93 murders from Samuel Little? Often referred to as the most prolific serial killer in American history, Samuel Little, the man who reportedly confessed to the murders of 93 people, spent decades terrorizing women. He was finally caught in 2012 and sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms. He died in prison at the age of 80. The FBI has been dealing with the task of trying to connect Little's confessions to actual names and victims. So far, authorities have only been able to link him to 50 murders, all based on his confessions. Little was born on June 7, 1940 in Reynolds, Georgia, to a teenage mother. It's unclear if Little had a relationship with his father, Paul McDowell, but later in life he would adopt his surname. As a child, Little ended up relocating to Ohio to be raised by his grandmother. From a very young age, though, Little showed signs that he was very troubled. He had a fixation on images depicting strangling, regularly got in trouble at school, and was arrested multiple times as a teenager. At one point in his life, Little was married and was involved in 2 other long-term relationships, but he never had children. His decades-long nationwide crime spree is believed to have begun in 1970. Little's MO was committing murders by strangulation, and he often targeted women who were sex workers and those suffering from substance misuse issues. According to Little, his last crime was in 2005. So, how did the truth about his crimes finally come out? In late 2012, Little was living in a homeless shelter in Kentucky, and he used a credit card at a gas station. Because police had been searching for him on drug charges, and he was known to frequent homeless shelters, they were able to track him to Louisville, where they arrested Little on drug charges. While in custody, they learned he had a warrant in California stemming from previous drug charges, and he was immediately extradited. Because of his long criminal history, police ran his DNA. Investigators determined that Little's DNA linked him to 3 unsolved murders from the 80s. As a result, Little was charged. Little also had to answer for crimes in Texas and Ohio. But the story does not end there. They didn't know it then, but the man they had in custody would be responsible for more than just the 3 murders they were charging him with. Little's stunning capture would garner the interest of authorities in other states, who had to check if the transient serial killer had a part in any unsolved murders in their regions. But as of 2014, he was only convicted of the 3 murders in California. It would be Texas Ranger James Holland who would eventually elicit more than 7 dozen murder confessions from Little. Holland flew to California in 2018, where Little was imprisoned, knowing he would have to approach the interview differently from the typical investigation. Rather than seek remorse or closure from Little, Holland instead gave him a sketchbook, both flattering Little and his passion for art, while also cleverly pulling from Little's near photogenic recall of his victims. By the time Holland was done completing 700 hours of interviews with the serial killer, Little had confessed to 93 murders.
How many did you kill in Los Angeles?
Los Angeles, approximately 20.
In a year's time, they quickly learned that Little's memory was remarkable, and 50 cold cases from Florida to Ohio were finally solved. But Holland wasn't the only person that Little spoke to about his deviant 5-decade crime spree. Before him, an author and journalist named Gillian Lauren was the first person to have a sit-down with Little. She, too, made various visits to him in prison, in hopes of learning more about his victims and what they looked like, which she did. Little drew his first illustrations of the women he killed and gave them to Lauren, as she attempted to put names to the faces. It was likely his interview with Lauren that would be the catalyst that led to him spilling it all to Holland, because afterward, Little gave him the jaw-dropping admission that he killed 93 women.